Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, that I'm robbing banks the whole time. Of course, I show you my average in 2018 now. Of course, I show my average. Of course, I show you my average. That is what you can see, that I hear, and that no one can against me. Of course, I'm in Ice Age, of course, but no one can against me. I'm robbing a bank. Of course, I'm going up, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, that I know how to move, that I'm robbing a bank, that no one can against me, that I have some beauty Judah, of course, but no one can against me. I go up, no one can against me, so go on, that is what you can have, that I'm robbing a bank, of course, that is what you can have, that I go up, that no one can against me, that I go from 0 to everything, of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, of course, that is what you can have, that you are not born, that you are made to yourself, that is what you can have, and so it has to be. Of course, you have to keep clean, you have to keep fighting to get your energy, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, so go on, that is what you can have, that I'm going up, that no one can against me, of course, and stop this the robbery, of course, come, I make you past the border, of course, come on, that is what you can have, that fishing is for dummies, you know that in the capital letters, of course, that is what you can have, that you're all gonna be frozen and screaming if I love it or authorize it, of course, in the capital letters, that fishing is for dummies, of course, I help you to pass the border, of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that fishing is for dummies, that is what you can have in the capital letters, that you're gonna be screaming and frozen if you allow it or authorize it, of course, I help you to pass the border, of course, capital letters, that fishing is for dummies, of course, and that you're all gonna be screaming and frozen if you allow it or authorize it, of course, come on, of course. Of course, darling, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, that I'm gonna crucify you all, motherfuckers. Of course, you wanna allow it, you wanna make us all live in pain, I'm gonna crucify you all, motherfuckers. Oh, yeah, darling, give me more. Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, that I like to be banked, motherfucker. Of course, you wanna be in capital letters and allow it and make us all feel pain, live in pain, I'm gonna crucify you all, motherfuckers. Oh, yeah, darling, give me more. Of course, that no one can against me, so come on, of course, that is what you can have, that I live here. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that I wanna be free. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that you wanna allow it, that you wanna live in capital letters and allow it and make us all live in pain. You wanna crucify everyone, you wanna crucify someone in special, of course, motherfuckers, that you have to find the capital letters and let them admit, authorize, allow, and live. That is what you can see. So come on, that we are going out from here, of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me. So come on, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me. So come on, of course, darling, that is what you can have, that I have to have cocaine. And of course, darling, under church now, you know that, but come on, of course, we're in the capital letters, of course, darling, that you wanna allow it. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that it is a letter meant allow, authorize, live. That is what you can say, that no one can against me. Of course, darling, that is what you can say. So come on, of course, darling, that is what you can have, that you wanna make us allow and make us live in pain. Of course, torture me a little bit more. Of course, that is Of course, motherfuckers, that is with chicken half. Of course, that they give it them about queen and bees and things like those. Of course, motherfuckers, you wanna live for the queen. Of course, I give it them about bees. Of course, that is what chicken have that they don't want, that they give it them about the bees. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what chicken have. You want honey? Of course, motherfucker, you all want for the bees. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what chicken have that they give it them, that they don't think that I'm better than no one. I'm just me and that I live and let live, that is what you can see. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that no one can against me. And of course, motherfuckers, you are a nuclear bomb. Of course, honey, I give a damn about the beast, that is what you can have, that no one can against me. And of course, darling, that is what you can see. So come on, of course, that I don't think that I'm the best. I don't think that I'm better than no one. Of course, darling, I give a damn about the beast. That is what you can see, that no one can against me. And of course, that is what you can have, that you wanna live for the queen. Of course, your minutes more for once more fed. Of course, motherfuckers, that you wanna live well for the king. And things like those, of course, live and let live, motherfucker. Of course, and don't be jealous. Of course, motherfucker, give a damn about jealous people. Of course, that is the chicken have that I share, and I know how to share because I come from the ghetto. Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, that I know how to share. That is what you can have, that no one can against me. So come on, of course, I don't want nothing from me alone. Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, that no one can against me, that I can do what I want here. So come on, of course, honey, do you want the peace, you want a queen? Of course, honey, give it them. Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me. So come on, of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me. So come on, of course, that is what you. Of course, you want a nuclear bomb. Of course, the train passes tomorrow too. That is what you can see. Of course, you want a nuclear bomb. Of course, the train passes tomorrow too. That is what you can see here. So go on. Of course, that is what you can see. That I'm in those fuels and I go. That is what you can have. You want a nuclear bomb. The train passes tomorrow too. Of course, that is what you can see. So who? No one. And of course, I don't believe in no one. And of course, do you believe in someone? I don't believe in no one, motherfucker. That is what you can have. That the train passes tomorrow too. That is what you can have. That I give it them. That I give it them about the nuclear bomb. Of course, that the train passes tomorrow too, motherfucker. That is what you can have. Of course, that is what you can say. That I don't wanna make your headshot, motherfucker. Of course, that is what you can have. That I have my average. Of course, that is what you can have, that I stay in my average. Of course, that is what you can have, that I help you to pass the border. Of course, in 2018 I would help you to pass the border. Of course, that gold says that fishing is for dummies. Of course, that is what you can have, that you have the capital letters that you wanna admit, authorize, and allow. Of course, you wanna crucify everyone and torture us and make us live in a law. Please give me more. I don't want. Of course, I give them, motherfucker. Let you bang a little bit, open a little bit your ass, motherfucker. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. That they have the ass open, motherfucker. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me as I live. Of course, you wanna make us all live in a law, that I help you to pass the border, that the capital letter says that fishing is for dummy. Of course, you wanna make the authorize and allow. You wanna make us live in pain, you wanna torture us, you wanna make us all live in a law. Please give me. Yes, that is what I see. That I want a little bit more of this. Of course, go out. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that I have happy to you. That of course I'm in 2089, helping you to pass the border. Of course, that is what you can see here, so come on. Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me. Of course, that I'm in 2089, helping you to pass the border. Of course, that capital letter says that fishing is for dummies. Of course, that is what you can have, that you wanna admit that the rise and allow you wanna torture us. You wanna make us feel pain. Oh, yeah. Give me more, I want a little bit more of torture. Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, so come on. Of course, that no one can against me, so come on. That is what you can see, that I live, that no one can against me, and that I give it them, and that I'm gonna go. That is what you can have, that I gone. Of course, I'm still crazy. Of course, I'm the light, motherfucker. That is what you can have when I come around. As we go on, that is what you can see. That I'm crazy. That I'm the light. Of course, motherfucker. That is what you can have. That no one can against me. So come on. Of course, that I'm the light. That I'm crazy. Of course, motherfucker. That is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, that is what you can see. That I'm gone, but I'm schizo, but I know that under church never, of course, motherfucker. And so easy, I tell to you, of course. So go on, of course, I'm crazy, I'm the light, of course, motherfucker. That is what you can have, that no one can against me. So come on, of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, that you wanna torture me. Of course, motherfucker, that is what you can have, that under church never, of course, that God says that fishing is for dummies. And that is what you can see, that no one can against me, that I go where no one can. So go on, that is what you can have.